Imagine this scenario. You're out of the office unexpectedly, and a colleague pings you because they need access to some system you have credentials for. Now, my listeners would never send passwords over email or Slack. But what about your coworkers? How many organizations out there are sending logins back and forth in plain text? Worse yet, how many just store all of their logins on a shared spreadsheet? Keeper Security's password management platform locks down logins, payment cards, and more in a patented zero-knowledge encrypted vault. Sign up for a Keeper free trial today. Visit securityweekly.com/Keeper. Picture your team being able to map out the external attack surface as it grows and see the same attack vectors as a hacker does. Most tools out there do asset discovery, but stop there. Enter Detectify. It takes an inventory of exposed web assets and automates vulnerability testing for security misconfigurations, expiring subdomains, and risks in third-party software. Here's the cool part. They crowdsource payloads from leading ethical hackers. It finds bugs you actually want to fix and finds them in time. Start a free 2-week trial by visiting securityweekly.com/Detectify. Go hack yourself.
Can your incident response technology collect from off-network endpoints? Xterra FTK Enterprise can. Endpoints are no longer located in a physical office, and organizations need a comprehensive investigation tool that enables holistic data collection and review. With FTK Enterprise, you can also scan for IOCs and MISP indicators. You can scan with Yara rules, and you can use integrations to trigger automatic endpoint collections. Visit securityweekly.com/Xterra for access to their white paper, Incident Response for a Remote World. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. Security Weekly listeners save $100 on your RSA Conference 2022 full conference pass. RSA Conference will be live in San Francisco June 6th through June 9th, 2022. That's a month from now. You really want to get hotel and flights if you haven't already, because it's getting expensive. Security Weekly will be there in full force, delivering real-time live coverage and interviewing some of the event's top speakers and sponsors. To register using our discount code, please visit securityweekly.com/RSAC2022 and use the code 52UCyber. That's 52, the letter U, Cyber. We hope to see you there. And I found out the other day I will be going. So give me a shout if you want to meet up at RSA. It'll be the first time I'm on a plane since RSA 2020, which is kind of a little bit depressing that the last time I took a trip far away was a business trip, and it will be the next one. But anyway. Today's second interview is all about getting value from SOAR beyond just phishing workflows. So we got a great, and I love that we got to pair up these interviews today, because the first interview that we just wrapped up with Prash, I think was a good baseline, a good intro into SOAR, where SOAR came from, how it's kind of evolved along with security operations. And now we get to talk to somebody on the customer side, on the practitioner side, putting together a lot of this automation, for the company that he works for. So our guest today is Ryan Freed, and he is a senior security engineer at Brooks Running. Ryan holds a master's in security, has worked in security for 9 years, and has, along with that master's, worked as an adjunct professor teaching security for 7 years. In fact, we looked up his record, and he has a solid 5 out of 5 on RateMyProfessors.com, with one student saying, really knowledgeable, laid back, and willing to help with anything that you might not wholly understand. Welcome to the show, Ryan.
Hey, happy to be here. I was surprised you didn't mention the chili pepper, which I'm not sure how I feel about that with the ratio of men to women in most of my classes.
Oh, no, I didn't see that. I must have missed that. Is that also on Rate My Professors?
I think so. It's been a while since I've checked, but I know there is at least a couple of reviews out there.
Chili pepper. That sounds like I don't know that was there. I think I would have noticed that. Maybe there's another website for rating professors. But it tickled me that when I was doing a little bit of research on you, I found you getting rated by your students, and they're all good. So it's great.
Great.
Yeah. So jumping into SOAR. obviously the phishing use case came up in the last interview, which I expected, because that is one of the default out of the box playbooks that they have in most SOAR tools. And today we're going to dive a little bit deeper. And so I guess, maybe give us a little background on your experience with SOAR tools and automating this stuff, and how you got to where you are now. Because you've used a couple different tools, right?
I have, yeah. So a couple of years ago, I came into a new company, and they had a product in there for, I think, 4 or 5 months. And I came in, in those 4 or 5 months, were still working on their first phishing workflow. Fast forward 6 months later, I was meeting with a vendor 2 hours a week and just barely had a phishing workflow operational. And my boss was great. We decided that the vendor wasn't for us, and we had a lot of the API connections and secrets set up already. So we did POCs with a couple of different SOAR vendors and found one that, for me, as a non-developer, non-programmer, was really important to have that ease of use capability. So we found that vendor. We did some professional services with them to get that first phishing workflow up, which I do think is important. It's one of our most used workflows, with having 200 to 300 emails submitted every month. But after that, we were able to get a different mindset for automation. So you think about SOAR, most people focus on automation, but I've found a lot of value in the orchestration and response. So we've gone beyond that initial phishing workflow, and we've turned either Slack or Teams into basically a control center where we can put in different commands to get information fast, but I would argue more important, consistently. Because in teams that have 2 to 3 to 5 analysts, and maybe there's high turnover and you're training new analysts, there's, for example, maybe four places to block a domain. And if you forget one place, that can result in a compromise. So that, speed to value, but that consistency is really important. I think we'll get into some of the workflows. One other thing I'd really want to talk about is, people think about SOAR, I have a small staff, I'm just going to automate it. And the first thing my analyst says is, well, you're going to automate me out of a job, right? I'm like, actually, no, I'm going to make your life so much easier. And as soon as I automated this one task they do every week, and it takes them 30 minutes of copying and pasting an email address from one place to another, and they haven't had to do that in like 6 months. And they're like, okay, we'll listen to you now. So it actually has helped retention for analysts, because they don't have to do that repetitive, monotonous work. And now they have time to do cool things like threat hunting or other things like that.
Yeah. So are you saying the days of a SOC analyst or IR analyst having so many tabs open that they can't tell what the tabs are, like that's over, that's done, we're not doing that anymore?
So I think about unofficial metrics, and as being a former analyst, I think about how many Chrome tabs do you have open. And if I can reduce that from, and this is not something we bring to the board, but if I can go from 20 to 30 down to like 3, I feel pretty good about their automation.
All right, number 1 new CISO metric reporting to the board: number of tabs open.
Just don't try and take away my 6 monitors.
That's fine.
6 monitors. I'm sure you'll find something to put on those other monitors.
Nature abhors a vacuum.
No, it's great. No, that's oh man, I love that. Number of tabs open is a metric. That's I'm gonna have to write that down somewhere. Yeah, and that's no, I'd like to dive a little bit more, talking about not using the automation as much. So this idea that, I think that is kind of the idea a lot of people come into it with is, okay, something happens in a SIM and it triggers something in my SOAR, and then just magic happens, and it's like this idea that somehow SOAR is just going to end-to-end tackle entire use cases and stuff like that. Which that assumption, it's not surprising that it leads to ideas of, oh, you're going to automate me out of a job. You're going to replace me with a small shell script, as the T-shirt used to say. But yeah, so orchestration and response, it sounds like you're using your SOAR more in more of a tactical way, where, when you need to do, get more information on an IP address, or you need to isolate a machine or get information about a machine, like they're almost like jobs that you would send the intern off to research and solve for you, right?
Yeah, I think out of our 20 workflows, so we built 20 in 6 months. Put into perspective, 2 of those, and I would even argue 1 is fully automated end to end. We get a super specific EDR alert that enriches a domain, and if it's a score of however many more of our virus total, it blocks in all of the places, and that's helpful. But there's so much more beyond that. And that's why I challenge when people do SOAR POCs to ask for another workflow besides phishing, because SOAR vendors put so many hours in their phishing workflow for a successful POC, but they need to have more than that to take advantage. So yeah, a couple examples are, let's say there's an indicator that you get, URL, domain, hash, something like that. We pay for tools that are underutilized. So we can put that, let's say domain in Slack, and it'll enrich it in all of our tools. It can find out which hosts have actually called to that domain. And then, I think of even more internal IP addresses. You can use that same workflow to say, I saw this internal IP in some alert. What is that? And that can go into another tool and enrich that and figure out what's the host name, who's logged into it, is it connected to our EDR, things like that. So that's pretty standard. 2 of my favorite workflows I would find are, and once you get into the automation mindset, you start to think of these. I feel like in security, I tell my students, maybe 2/3 of your job potentially is proving something was not your fault when something bad happens with some kind of availability. Yeah, I mean, it's the stuff they don't talk about in class, right? So I had a workflow. I think about it in terms of questions. What questions are people going to ask me? So I have the operations person next to me saying, what happened? Like, something's broken. So I literally type into Slack, was it my fault? And it looks at the configuration changes of all of our firewalls over the last 24 hours. And I can say, nope, not my fault. Or like they can't get to some IP address, I'll type in, should they blame me IP address? And it checks all of our firewalls, VPN, to see if that, look at their traffic and see, was it blocked? And if it wasn't, I can say, nope, that wasn't me. So I can get that answer in seconds rather than logging in with 2FA to all of our portals. Or my boss will read the Wall Street Journal and say, I heard about this CVE, are we okay? That answer takes a long time that question takes a long time to answer. So I can type in CVE, it looks up exploit DB, it looks up our vuln management system, what systems are affected, all from Slack. Like, I'm not opening any browser tabs there. So that's the beauty of the orchestration, and to be able to answer questions pretty quickly. One other example I want to bring up, because this was pretty impactful for us. So we were typically 8 to 5 shop, right? We want to get towards 24/7. So we do have paging system, but it wasn't being used, right? There's no integration really with it. So using SOAR, we identified what are the high fidelity critical alerts. If those come into our inbox, page the on-call person. So now we became 24/7. And most important to me, if that's at 3 a.m., I don't want to boot out my laptop. I want to do everything from the comfort of my own bed. So from our SOAR workflows, we can isolate, or more importantly, unisolate if you mess up, right? Hosts from there. You can boot people from Office 365 sessions. You can force password reset. I have not gotten out of my covers. I'm able to do that very quickly, which time is of the essence. That's been pretty good for us.
From the Slack app on your iPhone or Android phone.
Yeah, exactly. Slack,
Wow.
Teams, whatever you use. Yeah.
You are literally living the dream. Like, a lot of people say that, and it's really old. Like I don't ever want to hear anybody say that again. But in this case, you literally are. Like that's like most of my career. I've been waiting for a time when you could actually ask questions like that, like just pass an IP address. Like one thing, and I'm interested to see if you've seen this, handled by a product or maybe somebody, use SOAR to create this. Like, in a lot of the investigations I've done over the years, like, you're looking at an individual, like an individual's user account keeps coming up as involved in this or something like that. And the next thing I want to see is kind of like a profile of that individual employee. Like I want a list of what devices they come from, what IP addresses they hit our OWA or whatever external VPN resources we have. That actually, that piece might not exist for a lot of companies anymore, since everything's SaaS. But yeah, just kind of like a profile of, like, this is everything we know of that's attached to this person. And like that would help me so much.
And that's something our analysts use almost every day. So they can see a username as part of an alert. And then I ask them, like, what do you want to see? I can pull their, 2FA authentication logs for the last 2 weeks. We can pull Azure AD authentication logs. Who's their manager? What region are they in? What devices are associated with them? So you're basically only limited to what your tools support as far as API calls. But we think about in terms of, like, use cases. So in a phishing workflow or potential credential compromise, what data do you want available to you? And I can put that all in Slack. You put the username in whatever format you want, and I can spit all that information back to you. Same thing with, like, a workstation. Let's say a workstation's compromised. Put that into Slack. I give you what IP addresses has it had, what users have logged into it. Pretty much, like I said, you're only limited to whatever tools you have available to you.
So your SOC folks get to do actual security work. This is one of the things.
Yeah. We're always hiring too, in case it's fun. Like,
there you go. There's the opportunity. Yeah.
And it's reassuring too, because we had a new analyst come on a couple weeks ago, and he's like, I've never had this available to me. Like, I want them to be able to do the fun work of purple teaming, threat hunting, get out of, like, that, tier 1 stuff where they're looking through so many sources. And then it, depending on who the analyst is, like, it's good to have additional context, and we want to hire people who have, like, different perspectives, but we also want to give them all that information available and not have that new analyst ask us, well, where is it? Or spend time fumbling around. So it's really become a huge orchestration and response tool for us.
So that kind of leads me to questions. I mean, my assumption was when we got into automating with SOAR that it was going to result in us getting to the things we were just, like, back shelving forever, or maybe even getting to full implementations of things we bought X years ago that never left the shrink rack box. But you're saying, it sounds like I'm totally short selling where we could go. Is that really, am I going too far there?
No, I mean, I think, once again, it allows you to leverage the tool set that you have. So maybe you haven't logged into certain things, or you haven't used your paid threat intelligence sources. This allows you to, from one place, do all of that on the back end. So I don't think it'll quite allow you to, like, get to that stuff that you're shoveling or, like, was, back towards it, but it is freeing up time for these analysts to do higher level investigations. And now, anytime I look for a new vendor, I ask, are you API capable? Show me your API documentation. Do you have integration with our SOAR? So it's become a different mindset where a lot of our tools revolve around it, to have that one central command center.
So sounds like you're not just better utilizing, you're raising the bar on what you're going to pick for a tool. As in your API question, you're not. You're getting better tools as a result?
I think so. I think we're getting better tools for us. And the goal is to remove that S from the front of it and allow operations or engineering to take advantage of it as well. The classic use case is account termination. I'm sure many of your listeners out there have had accounts out there for 30, 60 days after termination, which is a huge risk. So we can work with operations and look for tickets for termination, have that kick off workflows, and then disable that within seconds on a very consistent basis. Now, automation can scare people, and there are ways that you need to do a lot of different test cases to make that, but that results in a pretty significant risk reduction for the enterprise.
Mm-hmm. So
I think one of the
go ahead.
I think one of the key things to point out here is that this isn't just like, we're not even just talking about SOAR anymore. I think one of the biggest issues I've seen in a lot of organizations is it's easy to fall into these ruts where all your employees kind of have tunnel vision. Like each employee is maybe assigned to a particular product and the operation of that product and maintenance of that product. And so you end up having the WAF person and the SIM person and the maybe the CrowdStrike, the EDR person, and they all know their little pieces, but none of them are really doing meaningful security work. They're all just logging into those interfaces, clicking things, logging out, and going home every day. And I think you end up losing sight of what you're there to do, the bigger pictures. And I mean, it's just not fun. Like it's not rewarding work, to just interact with that one product day in and day out. It can get very dull, very boring. I think it's a lot more interesting when when you get to be part of the overall investigation, and when you're constantly developing, and identifying new stuff that you can automate or orchestrate. And it just gives you more confidence as a team, I feel like, and when you can, one click or one statement in Slack, get an answer to a question or isolate a machine or terminate an account. Yeah.
Done. No, absolutely.
Done ranting.
No, I think having that platform is huge. And I think you see more and more in the security industry of having one vendor buying a lot of different tools and having that one central command center to be able to do things. But I think the fun part is analysts are having a blast with this. I used to be the analyst and the SOAR engineer, so it's really easy for me to come up with workflows. But I would advise anyone doing SOAR is you actually want to incentivize your analysts to come up with ideas for things that don't have to be fully automatable, but questions that they have to be able to use their different tool sets. Because if I'm just a SOAR engineer over here saying, hey, like, anyone else want to automate or like do something? They're like, I don't know. But now they're actually incentivized to make their job easier after you prove the value from a couple different workflows.
Yeah, so Scientia actually put together a report that was commissioned by Cisco, but they did this double-blind study to try and get an idea of what outcomes resulted in positive security practices. Or what, sorry, I said that backwards. What security practices resulted in positive outcome?
Yeah.
And number one on that list was proactive tech refresh, which was unsurprising, but very satisfying to see as number one on that list. So getting rid of tech debt before it becomes tech debt. And then number two is well-integrated tech. And if you drill into well-integrated tech, it was the number one item for retaining security talent. So what you're saying, I mean, the experience of the person you just hired who came on and said, I didn't know it could be like this. It's frustrating. It's not, getting that 3 a.m. thing and being able to respond from your phone on Slack. That's a world different from getting on, putting on some clothes, VPNing into work, logging into a web interface. Oh,
yeah. And it's funny too. It's funny too because in the last couple of weeks, SOAR platform is down for a couple of days, you're troubleshooting and such, and I can see them like a little mopey of, I have to do this manual work again. And as soon as it was back up, the person who was on call was thrilled, because we got to automate that stuff retroactively. So yeah, I think it in a couple of different ways, the new analysts and a little bit of downtime, it's definitely proved its value.
Mm-hmm. So you think we can have fewer people on call with fewer alerts? They have to manually
fewer alerts.
run, I mean.
I don't know that would be a part of this. And that's what I'm saying. I don't know that we need fewer people. I think we can have the same amount of people doing work that they haven't had the time to do, such as like purple teaming, threat hunting, and more proactive security. More alerts. I mean, there are maybe some that you can automate of doing the action and then closing them, but I wouldn't argue that we would have less alerts. I just think we can have more consistent action throughout all of our alerts for those agreed upon procedures.
Mm.
But that retention is huge. I'm sure many people hear about like the talent shortage and such, but I really do think it makes a big difference from what you're talking about of having that platform type system to make their jobs easier.
We hear about burnout so much and the ability to go deeper and do something more interesting and something more impactful. Yeah. That sounds like a big part of what this accomplishes on the personal employee side. But the result is also positive, net positive for the company, because you get somebody who's more engaged, you get somebody who's doing deeper dive work, you get somebody who is maybe learning a new trade, or new skills, not a new trade, new skills along the way, and that'll keep them engaged and happier, I would think.
Yeah. I mean, we have, like I said, 200 to 300 phishing emails that have to be reviewed. And our SOAR platform can do that pretty well, to the point where we're saving up to 10 days per month, between the different enrichment and such that is done on the back end. So now our analysts can spend an hour, maybe even more. Like, when I keep going back to threat hunting because that's what I love, but whatever they want, maybe forensics and practicing that. So it does free up a little bit more time for them to do that.
And I would imagine on the metric scale, we talked about the metric scale before, jokingly, about the alerts and what you can measure on. But I would think also just the time to remediate would be so much better.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, and consistent. I'll keep harping on consistent because it's important. We draw upon these procedures and we want to use our tools properly. So yeah, the time to remediate, especially after hours, can be much quicker.
And in slippers.
And in slippers, yeah.
Yeah, so it's interesting here because we're actually seeing, one of the things this show looks at are trends in the market. And one of the trends we're seeing is kind of what I'm calling SOAR 2.0, where we have a whole new batch of SOAR products that specifically aim, to your point earlier with your experiences with SOAR tools, easier to use, easier to time to value, to get these things built and up and running. So like almost more of like if anybody's ever used like a Zapier or a if this then that, like at that level.
Yeah.
It's
like
building,
Scratch.
Yeah, like Scratch. Yeah. But
sure.
Like Sevco, Torque, Tines is one. There's a whole bunch is coming out of the woodwork that like you can go, just sign up for a trial, start connecting it to stuff, start playing with it, and get charged later or plug in a credit card and use. So, almost like more of a consumer approach to it, which is something we're seeing in general with security products, adopting that more, consumerization of enterprise IT trend that we've seen across not just security. But but I guess the question is like if a 6-month playbook now takes 6 hours, or a day or something like that, or an hour, where do we go from here? What does that allow us to do with the same resources or even more resources, beyond maybe even beyond what you're doing now. Like what are you looking forward to?
So I'm really looking forward to working with teams outside of security as well to be able to solve for their problems, because our connections to things like Azure AD and on-prem AD and whatever else are using a lot of their platforms. So I'm looking forward to like more integrations and branching out outside of security, and just keep thinking of those questions that, let's say you think about MITRE ATT&CK or like top use cases. Let's get that data for those 5 top use cases that we're seeing so we can take action so much faster. So that's what I'm looking forward to just keep pushing the envelope and seeing what other integrations we can get, because they don't have integrations for everything. But as you learn the tool, you can learn to make API calls, and that's helped me learn making API calls and such. So I'm just looking forward to more plugins, and then creating more things to make both analyst lives easier, but then branching out to the operations side as well.
Do you see any problem keeping the team energized and doing the same? Keep looking to continue to automate. Look, just what you're describing. Or once they kind of get do they come along naturally?
Yeah, no, they've come along since that initial like automating me out of a job. Now they're asking for more things like, well, actually, like, can you get me that information, or can we automate that? So I think they're getting more excited about it and thinking about more possibilities, how to make their job easier.
Oh, how cool is that?
Thinking like an analyst. That's how it should be, right?
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Honestly, like I love this conversation. Just makes me so hopeful, because one of my biggest concerns, and I've tried to, I've mentored a lot of people and tried to help find them jobs, and one of my frustrations is that, we tend to see 2 entry-level jobs here. Pen testing and SOC analysts tend to be, 2 of the ones that people focus on and look at. And, I get concerned hearing about how awful SOC jobs are at some places. Like we don't want people just entering our industry, to start with like the most miserable work, that's available in our industry. So this gives me a lot of hope.
Yeah, and I think being able to, get that information to them, I think it's important for them to understand like where we get it from. But my goal, if I were a SOC manager, would be able to get them an hour a week for threat hunting, an hour a week for developing whatever skill. And I think this allows something like that to happen to avoid that burnout.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Ryan, before we wrap up here, anything else that you want to share with us that we didn't touch on? Other than Brooks Running is always hiring.
Always hiring. Yeah, I think it's just getting into that mindset of what can I automate, getting beyond that, just like pure automation word, and focusing on the orchestration and response. And then, analyst retention, like let them think about what would make their lives easier. That way they can start thinking about, well, what else do I want to work on? What skills do I want to develop? So this should actually help them, rather than, the original SOAR maybe 1.0 of, well, you can do more with less. We can actually do more with the same people that we have. I think that's been really impactful for us.
Ryan, thanks so much for joining us on Enterprise Security Weekly today, and thanks for giving me hope.
Cool. Yeah, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Bye.
We'll be right back in a few moments with the weekly Enterprise News.